Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The date is 23rd Muharram 1447 on the Islamic calendar and July 17th, 2025 on the Gregorian calendar. And you are watching Muslim World News with me, your host, Abdurrahman Muhammad. Let's dive in head first and take a look at today's headlines. US limits benefits for immigrants. American citizen killed in West Bank's settler attack. Senegal drops Aken's drip city plan amid unrealized promises. And on sports, Human Rights Court backs Semenya. On to our first story of the day. Ethiopia has officially completed the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed announced the formal inauguration planned for September 2025. The massive hydroelectric project on the Blue Nile is Africa's largest dam and is expected to more than double Ethiopia's electricity capacity, potentially transforming the country into a power exporter in the region. The dam boasts a power generation capacity exceeding 6,000 megawatts and reservoirs that hold up to 74 billion cubic meters of water, significantly influencing the Nile's downstream flow. Government officials say GERD will boost development and help lift millions out of poverty by providing reliable electricity to Ethiopia's growing population. However, the announcement has sparked renewed tension with Egypt and Sudan. Egypt strongly criticized the move, calling the dam's completion unlawful due to the absence of a binding water use agreement. Both countries have long feared the dam could reduce the share of Nile's waters, particularly during drought. But Ethiopia maintains the project adheres to fair and equitable principles of regional cooperation. Turning now to the United States. The United States widened restrictions on public benefits for undocumented immigrants after the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, reclassified 44 federal programs, up from 31, as off-limits to those without legal status. Programs newly affected include Head Start, Title X family planning, mental health and substance abuse treatment, homelessness assistance, and health workforce training. The policy change was based on a revised interpretation of the 1996 Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act, PRWORA law, and opened for a 30-day public comment period. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said the move was intended to protect taxpayer funds and uphold the rule of law, reversing what he called overly broad exemptions made in 1998. Other departments, including Education, Agriculture, and Labor, also restricted access to adult education, SNAP food aid, and job training programs. Officials indicated more programs could be added into the future through additional guidance. Immigration rights groups and legal experts criticized the change, saying they foster fear, harmed public health, and disproportionately affected low-income families. They argue the policy may have violated constitutional and human rights protection. Despite growing opposition, the administration moved forward as a part of broader efforts to tighten immigration enforcement nationwide. Away from that story, we now focus still on the United States. The United Nations has warned that the recent US funding cuts to global HIV/AIDS programs could lead to up to 4 billion additional AIDS-related deaths and 6 million new infections by 2029 if no alternative funding is found. The warning follows the withdrawal of $4 billion from the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, a US initiative that has played a major role in reducing HIV-related deaths since 2003. UNAIDS said the funding gap has already caused major disruptions, including clinic closures, medication shortages, and halted prevention programs in low and middle-income countries. Vulnerable groups such as adolescent girls, LGBTQ+ people, and sex workers are expected to suffer the most from the fallout. Although some affected countries have increased domestic spending to fill the gap, UN AIDS Executive Director called the situation a deadly funding crisis and stressed that these efforts are not enough to sustain global progress in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Our next story takes us back to the New York mayoral primary. Zohran Mamdani, a 33-year-old Democratic Socialist from Queens, has made history by winning the New York City Democratic mayoral primary with the highest vote counts ever recorded. Mamdani secured 565,639 votes after 3 rounds of ranked choice voting, surpassing the previous record set by David Dinkins in 1989. His campaign focused on progressive policies like free public transportation and rent control, gaining strong support among youth and economically challenged voters. While Mamdani's victory energized progressive circles, some establishment figures expressed concerns about his policies and their potential impact on the city's economy. In the upcoming general election, Mamdani leads in polls with 35% support ahead of many other candidates. Mamdani's historic primary win signals a significant shift in the New York City's political landscape as the general elections approaches. Let's take a break from politics and take a look at social news, where a 23-year-old Palestinian American from Tampa, Florida, was bitten to death by Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank on Friday, July 11th. Saif al-Din Kamil Abdul Karim Musalat was visiting family in Sinjil, where he was attacked on his family's farm. Witnesses reported that the ambulances were blocked from reaching him for hours, leading to his death. Another Palestinian man, 23-year-old Raziq Hussein al-Shalabi, was also killed during the same incident, reportedly shot and left without medical assistance. The Israeli military claimed the incident began with Palestinians throwing stones at the Israeli civilians, resulting in minor injuries, and stated that the event is under investigation. Musalat's family is calling for the US-led investigation and accountability for the perpetrators. The United States Department acknowledged the incident but declined further comment. This marks the first killing of a Palestinian American in the West Bank since President Trump took office and lifted sanctions on Israeli settlers involved in violence against Palestinian civilians. Now on to business news. Senegal has officially terminated plans for the Aken city, a multi-billion-dollar futuristic city project once championed by the US-Senegalese musician Aken. The government cited stalled progress, lack of funding, and unfulfilled commitments as reasons for reclaiming the 800-acre site originally allocated for the development. Announced in 2020 as a high-tech smart city inspired by African innovation, the project promised state-of-the-art infrastructure and digital currency ecosystem. However, 5 years later, the only visible structure is a partially completed welcome center with little else achieved. Tourism officials now plan to repurpose the land for a more feasible $1.2 billion coastal development that includes resorts and public amenities. Aken is expected to retain a small parcel within the redesigned project, but will play a reduced role moving forward. The decision reflects a broader trend towards practical investments approaches, especially as governments weigh the risks of overly ambitious privately driven ventures. Shifting our attention to Malaysia. Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has warned that the trade is now being used by powerful countries to pressure and control other countries. He spoke during a meeting of Southeast Asians foreign ministers in Kuala Lumpur, saying that high tariffs and trade restrictions are becoming more common and are no longer just temporary. His warning comes as the United States plans to start charging high taxes between 25% and 40% on goods from countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. These taxes could begin in August if no trade deal are made. Only Vietnam has reached a deal with the United States so far, which helped lower its tariffs. Anwar called on the Association of South Asian Nation countries to trade more with each other and not depend too much on powerful nations like the United States. He said the region must stay united and strong to face these global changes. To protect its economy, Malaysia's central bank has lowered interest rates for the first time in 5 years. The country is also talking with the United States to try and make a fair trade deal. The United Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is attending the meeting, but many association of South Asian nation countries are worried. A joint statement from the group says that using trade rules to punish others can hurt the region's economy and stability. Islamic banking is steadily gaining popularity in Kenya, offering financial solutions that align with Islamic principles, free from interest and grounded in ethical investing. More Muslims are turning to these Sharia-compliant services as an alternative to conventional banking. In response to this growing demand, institutions like ABSA Bank are now stepping in with digital tools to support Islamic banking on the go. Here is Sakina Orembo with more on this feature.
As the global financial landscape shifts to inclusivity, Islamic banking continues to gain ground in Kenya, offering Sharia-compliant solutions to a growing population of Muslims seeking ethical financial services. Islamic banking is a financial system that operates in accordance with Islamic law Sharia, which prohibits interest, gambling, and speculative trading. Instead, it encourages profit sharing, asset-backed financing, and ethical investments. Conventional banking, on the other hand, is interest-based and aims at profit maximization through credit and deposit services, often without religious constraints. Speaking during the revamping of La Riba Timiza, Sheikh Abdulrahman highlighted the main differences between Islamic banking and conventional banking.
Some of the distinguish or differences between conventional banking, and Islamic banking, I will highlight few points. Number one, in terms of regulatory perspectives, obviously the conventional banks are governed or regulated by financial laws only. While Islamic banking is not, that itself is not sufficient, rather than we have to add another layer, which is Sharia compliance. In terms of core activities that the Islamic banking and conventional banking does, in conventional, obviously, they accept deposit to pay interest on it. So it's based on riba. But in Islamic banking, obviously, we accept deposit, but we are not allowed to charge interest on it. So the profit on Islamic banking is based on real asset, tangible asset, as Sheikh Tego mentioned.
Additionally, he mentioned the main principles that governs Islamic banking.
The main principle or foundation which govern Islamic banking. So we repeated the word Islamic government. ما هي المبادئ الحاكمة من خلال مقاصد الشريعة, the Islamic banking. Number one, which I mentioned earlier, النقود وسيلة وليست سلعة. So money is a medium of exchange, but not a commodity or a product whereby you can buy, you can sell it. That's principle. Principle number two is liberating money from hoarding. The principle of hoarding, and money should be circled in the economy.
Islamic banks such as Gulf African Bank, First Community Bank in Kenya, and Islamic windows within conventional banks like KCB Sahil Banking. These institutions offer services like Islamic personal financing, Islamic insurance, and Hajj saving accounts. On the other hand, conventional banks such as Equity Bank, Cooperative Bank, and Standard Chartered offer traditional banking products like fixed deposit accounts, overdraft facilities, and interest-based loans and mortgages. Amid this trend, ABSA Bank revamped its mobile platform La Riba Timiza on 10th July to cater for Islamic banking needs, making a step forward in financial innovation and religious inclusivity. According to their CEO, they are about to celebrate their 20th anniversary in August of this year, and they are the first one to introduce Islamic banking in Kenya.
We'll be marking the 20th anniversary in August this year, which is the anniversary for us as ABSA, but also for Islamic banking in Kenya, because we were the first bank to introduce Islamic banking in Kenya.
This new upgrade supports both conventional and Islamic banking services, making it easier for Muslim customers to access Sharia-compliant financial tools digitally. Users can now open Islamic accounts, check balances, and apply for murabaha financing and make transactions that align with Islamic values all from their phones. Elizabeth Wasuna, who is the banking director of ABSA Bank Kenya Business, highlighted that ABSA Bank consistently wants to add more new products and services that are compliant to Islamic law and are planning to empower women in their banking proposal.
It's a significant conversation because we have promised over the years that we want to revamp and consistently add on new products and services to the Sharia-compliant banking proposition. We have foresight to talk about women in business proposition, an area that I'm quite passionate about, not because men are not important, but because we know that women have been sidelined for many years, and it's important for us, if we're really interested in ensuring that the economy of this country can grow, we must include women, whether from a conventional perspective or a Sharia-compliant perspective. It is important.
Islamic banking is now clearly growing, with more people now choosing it for faith-friendly financial services, with banks like ABSA now offering Islamic options through mobile apps. It's now easier for Muslims to bank in a way that follows their beliefs. Sakina Orembo, Al Huda TV.
Shifting our attention to the sports world, Olympic champion Caster Semenya won a major legal victory after the European Convention on Human Rights ruled that she was denied a fair hearing by Switzerland's top court in a 15-2 decision. The European Convention on Human Rights found that the Swiss Federal Supreme Court failed to properly review her appeal against testosterone regulations imposed by the World Athletics, which had effectively barred her from competing in the women's middle distance races. The court ordered Switzerland to pay her £80,000 in legal costs. Though the ruling does not overturn World Athletics regulation on reinstate Semenya's eligibility to compete, it sends her case back to the Swiss court for a new review. This development reignites global scrutiny of rulings affecting athletes with difference in sex development, which critics argue are discriminatory and lack scientific grounding. Semenya, now 34 and focused on coaching, framed the decision as a human rights milestone rather than a personal athletic comeback. Advocates hailed the judgment as a step forward for fairness in sports, while the ruling could influence future debates over sex eligibility regulations in international athletics. On our final story in the sports world, former Real Madrid coach Carlo Ancelotti was sentenced to a 1 year in prison by Spanish court for tax fraud involving over €1 million in undeclared income from image rights in 2014. The court also fined him €386,000, although he is not expected to serve jail time since Spanish law allows suspended sentences for the first-time non-violent offenders with terms under 2 years. Ancelotti was accused of using shell companies, including one in the Virgin Islands, to hide earnings while managing Real Madrid. He was cleared of charges for 2015 due to uncertainty over his residency status that year. Prosecutors had sought a harsher sentence, but the court imposed the minimum penalty. The Italian coach claimed he acted on advice from the club and his financial advisors, although he later repaid over €1.4 million. The court ruled the payment was not voluntarily. He joins a list of high-profile football figures in Spain, previously convicted of tax-related offenses. Dear watchers, that's the end of today's news, but for something I found quite interesting, did you know that in Kenya, cracking tribal jokes isn't just frowned upon, it can actually land you in legal trouble. So next time you're tempted to roast someone's tribe, maybe stick to their football team instead. If you didn't know, well now you know. That brings us to the end of today's program of Muslim World News. I've been yours truly, Abdul Rahman Muhammad. It's been a pleasure having you with us. Stay informed, stay inspired, and may peace be upon you. Until next time.